Pac-12 and the Big 12 kind of have been at war here for the last couple of years, and the Big 12 won. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football, back at it again. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on college football, pro football, Madden, EA college football, NFL draft, anything related to American football, hit that red subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. Also hit the like button too, and follow me on Twitter. Twitter and XFam, whatever the hell it's called, is growing. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Well, I will let everyone here know that on Friday, I dropped a video about my college football betting futures for the Heisman Trophy. I was so proud of it. It was a new segment. I was like, you know what, dude, this is awesome. We're going to do this on a Friday. The Pac-12 media deal is going to work itself out. But anyways, we're going to find our way through the whole situation. Like I said, we're going to have that. And unfortunately, my video didn't do very well because one of, if not the biggest stories in college football and all of college sports history happened on Friday. This right here, CBSSports.com from David Cobb. We have Oregon and Washington join the Big Ten. Programs depart Pac-12 in 2024 as serving as charter members since 1915. Again, last year, USC, UCLA to the Big Ten, Oregon and Washington to the Big Ten. Absolutely huge. And along with this, after this situation happened, we heard earlier that Colorado left for the Big 12. Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. Apparently, Arizona State and Utah begrudgingly left the Pac-12 for the Big 12. Right now, the Pac-12 is sitting at 4 members. It looks like it's on its deathbed. There's a lot of little news stories going on right now. I am going to wait to report on those later. There's plenty of videos on that coming. But for right now, we just have to appreciate what happened to the Pac-12. The Pac-12, the Conference of Champions, been around for almost 100 years at this point, and it's unfortunate. There's going to be so many articles and so many reports and analytic situations about this conference to see what happened, see why they're in this situation. A lot of people, because when Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12, thought that the Big 12 was going to die, and then the Pac-12 would absorb some teams, and then the Pac-12 lost some teams, and then the Big 12 thought they were going to die, and they've been kind of going at it for a little bit here. I want to go into that because the Pac-12 and the Big 12 kind of have been at war here for the last couple of years, and the Big 12 won. I'm going to go through a couple of those reasons here. These reasons are, again, they're loosely connected to each other. They kind of bleed a little bit over into each other here and there. I want you to get in the comments and let me know which other ones you should, think I should add or change or adjust from here. But these are the 5 reasons why the Pac-12 ultimately lost the war to the Big 12. And like I said before, these are in no particular order, so these are going to bleed over into each other in multiple different areas. The first one here is progressive bias. And I know that a lot of people say, oh, well, conservatives are biased too. I don't deny it. But when you think about that, you think about Seattle, Portland, the Bay Area, Los Angeles, you think about Denver, and even certain aspects of Salt Lake at this point, and then Phoenix, not so much. I'm not really sure about Phoenix and Tucson, but I do know that especially the West Coast members there, they definitely, what's the term I want to use here? What's the polite way of putting it? Look down on the rest of America. Oh, that's flyover states, that's a truck stop league, blah, blah, blah. That's the whole situation there. As a matter of fact, you can see the fact that as much as they would like to say that they're progressive, liberals and progressives aren't as, what's the term I want to say here? They're pretty arrogant is what I'll say. So much so that even the Washington Post posts this, that they have a study here that basically says that white liberals dumb themselves down when they speak to black people, a new study contends. And again, that is not saying every single fan who is a fan of the Pac-12 teams is a white liberal who does this, but I'm basically saying this is another example of I'm obviously up here and the rest of these people are down here. And that rings true, especially in college sports, with a lot of these members in these college conferences. It bleeds over into those, into sports and how people interact there. So you see the fact that right there is a microcosm of kind of what happened here. And again, the Big 12, why would we even worry about them? Again, we're in Los Angeles, they're in Ames, Iowa. As a matter of fact, there was this tweet out that I had to go ahead and respond to. So here from Utah Football Stats and Analysis. And again, Utah, you can see the fact that Utah and Arizona State are not exactly thrilled to join the new Big 12. That's just what we're seeing out here. But again, this tweet says Seattle, Washington, Ames, Iowa. Bay Area, California, Lubbock, Texas. Los Angeles, California, Provo, Utah. Wow, we are really downgrading, aren't we? And he's like, man, look at this, shaking my head. Well, and I basically said, all the cities on the left are expensive and covered in poop. That's what I said. But again, that's one of those things where you have to remember, if Seattle, Washington is a bastion of amazingness. The Bay Area, California is technological advancement, and Los Angeles, California is the most amazing place in the world. Dude, first of all, I've been to Provo. It's a beautiful city. Lubbock, I heard Lubbock's not very great. I heard that Ames, Iowa's not bad too. Again, it's one of those things where these college towns, I actually really appreciate the smaller college towns, more, positive feel. First of all, I love Stillwater, Oklahoma. Boise State played at Oklahoma State a couple years ago. I would play them every single year. They're the coolest fans. It's a cool little city. I loved Stillwater, Oklahoma. I don't like humidity, but I like Stillwater, Oklahoma. But again, remember here, those Pac-12 members there, that's progressive bias bled over into multiple areas. That's one of the reasons that it helped them lose the war with the Big 12. I'll tell you why more in the next couple of reasons. The next reason here is BYU. So when you look out here and you see the fact that, okay, USC and UCLA, they left. Well, one thing that would have, made that harder to happen. And again, I'm not saying that BYU would have saved them had they added them a couple of years ago or originally, but I will say that it couldn't have hurt. BYU is a really solid brand. They're a very, very popular brand that you could honestly say that all across the world in every single time zone when BYU plays, somebody is going to be watching that for your team. So again, if BYU is on Pac-12, if you could even get the network, people would be watching. You see the fact that one issue, though, there was that it was a religious institution. A lot of the West Coast regions are atheistic, agnostic, secular, whatever you want to say there. BYU is outright a university that is religious. However, it wasn't a cultural fit, is what they said a while ago. They had clear value, but the conference never gave them a fair shake. And you see an article that basically said back in 2010, if they would have added them, it could have helped out this situation where they're in right now. Again, right here, it says that experts say Pac-12 really could have used BYU when it comes to media rights negotiations. This was back in March of this year. The Stuart Mandel, Forbes, Jim Williams sound off on BYU in TV negotiations and expansion, and they are a lot more valuable than people give them credit for. As much as people always say, oh, it's BYU, nobody watches BYU. Dude, they are super popular. They literally have a religion behind them. And unfortunately, the Pac-12 back in 2010, there's some movements around here. They're like, we could add them. No, let's go Utah, Colorado, screw BYU. Could it have helped? Yes. Would it have saved the league? I don't know, but it would have helped had you added BYU in. That kind of feeds into that progressive bias. The religiosity wasn't a cultural fit there. You could have overcame that. You didn't. You're at where you are now because of that. The next one here is a financial one that absolutely positively rang true with the whole situation. This will feed into my last point here, but it said right here that rising interest rates. So unfortunately right now we are in a very uncertain economic time. So the cost to borrow money from February 2022 until July 2023 has gone from 0.08, the federal funds rate, 0.08% to 5.12% in 18 months. That is a 64,000% increase in the cost to raise money, and again, or the cost to borrow money. You see the fact that ESPN was rumored to be sold at one point, and they've also been laying people off too. Right here from InsideTheMagic.net, and this came out on August 5th. It says Disney isn't losing ESPN, says CEO Bob Iger. Oh yeah, we're totally not going to sell the league, blah, blah, blah. They're totally on our future plans. It says at the present, CEO Bob Iger clarified that Disney isn't selling ESPN. Remember here, they were kind of in a spot here. There's been a couple movies they made that didn't really do very well. It's harder to borrow money. There's things like that were feeding into this. So they said, we're not going to sell the war. We're going to keep it alive with the streaming wars. However, they are leaning heavily into the SEC, and unfortunately, there weren't as many TV slots to go around as there were before. And unfortunately, it looks like the Pac-12 lost that because they didn't act when they needed to. ESPN, if they're running out of money in these situations, or they're not running out of money, they're trying to be more efficient with their money. So that was one of the things. The reason why Apple TV was, the leader in the negotiations. They offered the most money. ESPN was basically out of the whole situation. Remember, ESPN, although they didn't, completely fold and they're not being sold, they did cut a lot of fat. And part of that fat they had to cut it was crazy. So we had Jeff Van Gundy, Mark Jackson, Todd McShay, Jalen Rose, Ashley Brewer, Susie Culver, Steve Young, Keyshawn Johnson, tons of people got laid off. Even David Pollock on at College Game Day, lots and lots of personalities got laid off. It is super unfortunate. But again, you think about their cutting costs in all those different areas. They're heavy invested into the SEC. They're locked into their ACC deal. They don't have as much money to go through towards the Pac-12. They didn't. And ultimately that helped them lead to their demise. Another big issue here that I think Big 12 fans took advantage of this, and it was really, really valuable for them because the Pac-12 still had a high disparity in value in the brands in their league. So the Pac-12 used to have a tiered payment systems. USC got higher payments, Washington State got lower. And again, when the conference switched to an even tier pay system and aimed for parity within the league, that's what Joel Klatt said on his most recent podcast, basically saying the fact that they used to have this kind of a tiered system. What Florida State wants in the ACC in order to be competing with the Floridas and the SEC teams that they're close to. So unfortunately, though, even with that whole situation there, the Pac-12 wanted to treat them evenly, even though there was a huge disparity in the value in their brands. So when the Big Ten comes to call in, the Big Ten came for USC and UCLA, took those two brands. They were a high disparity in value between Arizona State, and between Washington State and Oregon State. Same situation with Oregon and Washington. Huge disparity. And basically the Big 12 brands, the next Big 12 brand that the Big 10 would have taken, maybe Kansas, although their football program needs to get to work. I do appreciate what they're doing, but they need to get better with that. Maybe a TCU or something like that. But for the most part here, you can see the fact that they still had brands to be plucked, whereas the Big 12 really didn't, and they took the scraps. Their scraps are pretty good. Four corner schools are good scraps to take, so to say. I know Colorado just went 1-11. Colorado did have a national championship in 1990. I'm just saying, not a bad brand to pick. Denver, Deion Sanders for now. So again, that whole disparity in the value in brands was a really, really important thing here that hurt the Pac-12 versus the Big 12. And last but not least, the most important reason why the Big 12 won the war with the Pac-12 was because the Pac-12, they didn't know they were at war. Brett Yormark moved up the negotiation window in front of the Pac-12 because he saw the situation. He saw the writing on the wall. He saw the interest rates. He saw the lack of money. He saw that whole situation. He really got aggressive. He's a New York businessman. He is a shrewd businessman. Moves the negotiation window up, signs the deal, and then the Pac-12 took a really, really long time because linear TV options really weren't there. And a lot of the universities, scoffed at the thought of being exclusively streaming because people would forget about those. Unless you actively were looking for Pac-12 football, you wouldn't find it. You can passively find Big 12 football. You can passively find Big 10, SEC, ACC football. If they were on Apple TV Plus, you would have to actively find them. You couldn't passively find them. That was a big issue there. But remember here, Brett Yormark saw the situation, moved the negotiation window up, solved it, and they're good now. And remember here, George K., we haven't decided if we're going to go shopping there, meaning the Big 12, whether or not we're going to be shopping for teams. Again, the deal took so long to make that teams could leave without an exit fee from the Pac-12. Remember here, the most important thing with the whole war is you need to understand if you're in it or if somebody else thinks you're in it with them. It doesn't really matter because that's going to change how your behaviors are. The Pac-12 never took it serious, and unfortunately, it cost them for this foreseeable future. What is that? Pac-12, 8 teams left. It costs you 2/3 of the league. There's going to be novels, books, movies written about the history of the Pac Conference, the West Coast Conference, or the Pacific Coast Conference, whatever the situation is there. You can see the fact that, progressive arrogance. You see the fact that there's a huge disparity in values between the top brands and the bottom brands. You see the fact that the Big 12 actually knew they were at war versus the Pac-12 not knowing they were at war. That's the reason why the Big 12 won the war with the Pac-12. The Pac-12 4 situation right now still has that brand. They still have the entity. If it actually survives, we'll see, man. But that's the reason why the Big 12 won the war with the Pac-12. All right, guys, get in the comments right now. Let me know what you think about that whole situation. Like I said, there's a lot of those things a lot of those examples kind of bleed in with each other there. So there's a couple of them that kind of can go back and forth. But again, you tell me what you think about those. Give your breakdowns in the comments right now. But I will talk to you guys later. There's going to be a ton of college football content coming up and also some games coming up here. We're only a couple weeks away from games. You guys get in the comments and also sub and follow me on Twitter, X. I'll see you guys later. I am out.